Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Pastor Batson here with a word for the world in times like these. Today I want to talk about this thing called hope. What I've discovered is that while hope is the very essence of who we are as Christians and as believers, we need hope. In fact, without hope, there is no us. Without hope, there's no relief. Without hope, there's no future. Without hope, there just isn't anything left. In fact, so hope is the feeling feeling of expectation. It's the feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. That's what hope is. Hope is a feeling of expectation or a desire for a certain thing to happen. Hope is pretty amazing. I want to share a scripture, just two lines about hope, and then I'll press on. In Romans chapter 4, verse 18, 19, there's these two verses. Let me just read them to you. It says, even when there was no reason for hope, Abraham kept hoping. Even when there was no reason for hope, Abraham kept hoping, believing that he would become the father of many nations. For God had said to him, that's how many descendants you will have. And Abraham's faith did not weaken, even though at 100 years of age, he figured I can't read, y'all. He figured his body was as good as dead, and so was Sarah's womb. Let me read that one more time without messing up, just to prove that I can read. And Abraham's faith did not weaken. Even at 100 years of age, he figured his body was as good as dead, and so was Sarah's womb. Isn't that amazing? That Abraham, in the face of having no reason to hope, he kept on hoping. So here's the question. What do you have to go through? What do you have to go through that would have a reason, leave no reason to hope? What in this lifetime, what do we go through that would leave us no reason to hope? Can I give you one? Corona, divorce, death, loss of a job, eviction. There are so many things that we go through on a regular basis that give us reason to lose hope. But Abraham, watch this. Abraham, in the face of all of these things, Abraham had to hope, watch this, that his history didn't hold his destiny hostage. Let me try that one more time. Abraham had to hope that his history did not hold his destiny hostage. What do you mean his history didn't hold his destiny hostage? Well, if you remember, Abraham was promised to be the father of many nations, but it was in chapter 16 that Abraham decided to take things into his own hands. His wife Sarah decided to bring her servant girl, her bondservant Hagar, into the picture and said, listen, I saw how you've been looking at her. Why don't you just go have a baby with her? And that way we can preserve our future. That way we can make sure, in other words, it's saying we can help God out because we're losing hope. But can I just tell you something, that we don't ever have to help God with this thing called hope? And so what happened is they ended up having a son named Ishmael, but Ishmael was not the promise. Ishmael was not who God was talking about. And let me tell you something. Anytime you intervene and you feel like you got to help God out, God will show you that ain't what I'm talking about. And sure enough, they ended up facing difficulties. And sure enough, Ishmael ended up having to go. And when Ishmael had to go, that caused problems. But watch this. He wanted to make sure that his past wasn't just going to hold his future hostage. But watch this. And can I tell you something? All of us have a past. All of us have all of us have some skeletons, so to speak, in the closet. We all have done some things, experienced some things in life that we wish we just hadn't done, that we wish we simply hadn't experienced. But just because we have a past, God doesn't hold our past against us. In fact, this Sunday is Palm Sunday. It's the Sunday where we celebrate Jesus Christ making his triumphal entry. He's on his way to the cross. But can I tell you about the message of the cross? The message of the cross is when Jesus Christ died. He gave himself to the cross so that you and I wouldn't have to be held hostage by our past. All of us have a history, but that history does not have to hold our destiny hostage. The message of the cross says that Jesus Christ died, and he died not just for our past sins, but even for our future sins, so that our past couldn't hold our future hostage. So to understand that that's what this is all about, that Abraham, while on the one hand has a past, God didn't allow his past to hold his future hostage. Can I prove it to you? Because that's not where Abraham's story ends. But let me interject this right here, because has anybody seen the movie The Lion King? Lion King is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, go see Lion King. It's an old movie, but and it's come out with different versions. But Lion King is an amazing movie. And there's one scene in there where little Simba, who is the heir to the throne, and he's been made to feel like he's responsible for his father's death. And in the process of being that, he runs away and lives this life, Hakuna Matata, a worry-free existence. He runs and he leaves. He's trying to leave his past behind, where this monkey named Rafiki sees him and understands and recognizes who he is and says, wait. You have a future. You're the king. You need to go back and take your place. He says, man, I can't go back there, man. It hurts too much. My past is too painful. And he was allowing his past to hijack his destiny. He was allowing his past to hijack everything else that God was going to have for him. But here's what that monkey said. Monkey said, no. I know your father, and your father would want you to go and take your destiny. Go back and take your domain. And he says, I can't. It just hurts too much. He says, plus, my daddy is dead. And he said, it's my fault. He said, man, I know your father. And he told him to go look into this water. And of course, he looked in, and all he saw was a reflection of himself, and he was so disappointed with what he saw. He said, see, man, I told you that my father wasn't there. He said, look again. And this time when he looked, he saw the image and likeness of his father. And his father began to say these words to him. His father said, you are more than what you have become. Come here, everybody, because can I just tell you something, that God has put so much in us that all of us are so much more than what we have become. And so, that monkey, and so he said, it just hurts so bad. So here's what he did. Rafiki walked with a stick. He took that stick way back yonder, and he bust Simba upside his head. And you know what Simba said? Ouch. I don't know what y'all thought I was going to say. He said, ouch. He said, what'd you do that for? He says, it doesn't matter. It's in the past. Because he was trying to display to him that all of us have some past hurts. All of us have a past, but it doesn't keep us from our destiny. God still wants you to walk in your destiny. So walk in it. Walk boldly. No, yes, you may have made some mistakes. And here's what I'm trying to tell you. His history didn't haunt him. It helped him. What do you mean by that? His history did not haunt him. His history actually ended up helping him. What do you mean? Because his history was, even when he left, if you go back to chapter 12 in Genesis, when he left, God said, I'm going to take you, I'm going to show you a place. He says, you ain't going to know what it is. You just trust me. I'm going to show you. And Abraham left Ur of Chaldeans, and he began to follow God to a place that he had no clue or no idea where he was going to go. That history of walking with God by faith began to help him. And then because I told you what happened in chapter 16, but what I didn't tell you is what happens in chapter 22. Because in chapter 22, well, Isaac is not only born, but he's about to have to give up and sacrifice the promise that God gave him another son named Isaac, and he's about to have to kill Isaac. But what happens, of course, when he goes up in obedience to what he heard God say, God, of course, provided for him a ram and an opportunity to not have to do that. So what ends up happening is now he has to remember his history with God is helping him, because even when God told him to leave Ur of the Chaldeans. He ordered his steps. When he came up against Pharaoh and he ended up lying about his wife being his sister for fear of his life, God brought him through that. When he and Lot, his nephew Lot, fell out, God brought and he gave Lot all the good stuff and he kept the bad land. God developed his land and made it good. Every time he has done anything with God, God has continued to provide for him. And at the most difficult moments in life, God was with him. And so let me just tell you this. That's why even at 100, that's why he was still hoping against hope. One version says. Another version said when he had no reason to hope, he was still hoping, because even though he knew his body was dead and he knew Sarah's womb was dead, because of his history that he had with God, he was able to trust God for this moment. And can I tell you, I stopped reading at verse 19, but if you read verse 20, can I tell you what verse 20 says? It says, Abraham never wavered in his believing God's promise. In fact, his faith grew stronger. Let me tell you something. Whenever you know a God who has brought you through darkness into his marvelous light, you begin to trust God in ways like you have never trusted God before. Listen, we have every reason to hope. And I know that when we look around, it can look hopeless. But y'all, God has given us so much, and we need to keep on hoping, because our history doesn't have to hold our destiny hostage. In fact, our history can help us. How? Because every time we think back about every time we could have been taken out, God still provided. When we didn't deserve it, God still made a way. Y'all, our history ought to help us to continue to have hope. I love y'all. And until next time, peace.